What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today's video is all about how to make your Warlock more complete inside of PvP. It is a subject that a lot of Guardians shy away from. Either you find it too difficult, maybe you don't have as much fun, or maybe you just feel like every time you step on the battlefield, it's just going to be a massacre and not in your favor. This video is all for you. I break it all down: supers, abilities, aspects, fragments, armor stat distribution, best exotic armors to pair with your Guardian, and of course, best easy to use weapons inside the PvP arena to help make you a better PvP player overall. If you are a Hunter or a Titan main and you would like your version of this video, make sure you let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to make it. But for those of you Warlocks out there that struggle, let's get it going. Okay, to get us started, we need to go over supers. My personal preference is Nova Bomb. The reason I like Nova Bomb is because it's a one and done. And if you happen to throw it at an enemy and there happens to be one of their allies somewhat nearby, you have the additional seekers that will spawn and seek them out and track them down. You don't have to do anything. You throw it, you go back to your business, either defending the objective or moving on to other enemies that might be in your area. Other supers that technically do work, and it really depends on your preference. Song of Flame is a very good super. I have seen people doing pretty good work with Winter's Wrath, and even though it doesn't last as long, Storm Trance is pretty strong in PvP as well. The only one I would particularly shy away from is Needlestorm. Needlestorm is not a very reliable super. On paper, and when you use it in PvP, you think it probably would be reliable. All those needles embed themselves into the enemy. How could they possibly survive? Well, in PvP, everything moves a lot faster, and you're generally shooting your super at one, maybe two enemies. And if those enemies happen to be on the move and they duck behind cover, your Needlestorm is not going to track accordingly. Nova Bomb is slightly better because you can throw it at a closer radius or a closer distance than Needlestorm and have a much more devastating effect. Same thing with Song of Flame, same thing with Winter's Wrath, same thing with Storm Trance. They're all a little bit more reliable and you know exactly what you're getting from them. With Needlestorm, it's not as reliable at tracking. So my advice to you would be to stay away from Needlestorm as a Warlock in PvP. For abilities, I go back and forth between Phoenix Dive and Healing Rift. Phoenix Dive is nice if you have Weaver's Call as one of your aspects because it insta-deploys all of the threadlings that you have perched. Assuming that you have more than 3, that only bodes well for you. On the other hand, if you are playing something like Control, like an Iron Banner, a Healing Rift is very nice. You throw a Healing Rift down, generally around an objective, your allies are in it, everybody benefits from it. The only downside is that the cooldown is quite a bit higher. The jump doesn't matter. Use what you prefer. I prefer the burst glide because I like to get around the area a lot faster. Some people swear by blink, but if you aren't used to blink, it is not the time to start experimenting in PvP where everything is moving a lot faster around you. For the melee, make sure you put on Arcane Needle. Whether you are using this as Lightning Surge or you are just throwing this from a distance, Arcane Needle beats literally everything else. My personal preference on the grenade is going to be the Threadling Grenade. I chuck the Threadling Grenade with the same hope that I chuck it in PvE, and that is that the Threadling Grenade is going to track once deployed to a nearby target. And one of the best things about this is, typically speaking, if you get into a gun battle with an enemy and you wear them down quite a bit, but you don't wear them down all the way and they duck behind cover, and now you have a choice. You have to either run up and do a lightning surge on them, or you seek them out and hope that they don't pick you off first. Chuck your Threadling Grenade, instead, and watch them just go and finish off the enemy for you. It's been a good grenade for me many times in one-on-one gun battles. The other really good one is the Cold Snap Grenade. The Cold Snap Grenade does kind of a similar thing as a Threadling Grenade, which is it seeks out enemies and freezes them. You will see notices on the screen when you're looking towards that direction of the enemy if the enemy is in fact frozen. So you know you have a few seconds Again, I say a few, but we all know how fast PvP moves. So the idea would be throw the cold snap grenade. If you know the enemy is right there, you know they didn't run far, you know they're going to peek around the edge again and start shooting at you, that cold snap stops them in their tracks, and hopefully you're already running towards them. Now, in a long distance fight, that absolutely will not work, and the threadling grenade will work much better. You also could make an argument for the healing grenade. Although, quite honestly, the healing grenade, look, if you're going to die, you're going to die. It's just the way it is. Same thing with your allies. But you could theoretically give yourself a boost to health, or if you get struck with an arcane needle yourself, you can chuck this on the ground, remove the debuff. Hopefully, by the time you do that, the enemy isn't in your face, putting you on the ground. But the healing grenade, probably not as potent as Cold Snap or Threadling. Certainly not as useful either. For aspects, I prefer to use Weaver's Call and Lightning Surge. The reason I like Lightning Surge is, hey, I get the jolt inflicted into the enemies. A lot of times when I use Lightning Surge, there's more than one enemy around, which means I can start debuffing them right away. Oftentimes when I'm using this, there's at least one other ally somewhere near me, or at least not that far behind me. And even if I die, the ally behind me typically has an easier time taking down two enemies. Again, you want to use teamwork as much as you want to be a force to be reckoned with. Well, sometimes that means you got to be the guy that starts it off, but maybe someone else has to finish it. Trust me, there's going to be enough times where you're going to finish a gun battle that someone else starts. So make sure you return the favor and be a complete teammate. The other thing with Weaver's Call is another good one, because those threadlings, again, will seek out an enemy. I think of the different maps where there's two different levels and you have someone below you. Obviously, you're not going to peek out from over the top because you're at quite a bit of a disadvantage. You don't quite know exactly where the enemy is. Well, your Weaver's Call doesn't care about that. You throw that down, and guess what? Those threadlings go down to the next level, or maybe even up to the next level, and start the damage. Typically speaking, when people see Weaver's Call coming at them, the threadlings coming at them, they tend to move away, because even though it may not kill them, they certainly still don't want to get hurt and risk getting killed themselves by maybe another teammate that you have. So Weaver's Call is a good kind of, I don't know what the word is, maybe like a scare aspect. You won't expect to get kills with Weaver's Call, but it's more reliable than the other ones, and we'll quickly go through them. Hellion doesn't make a lot of sense because there's tons of gun battles in PvP that are too far away for the Hellion to even proc. By the time that Hellion procs, throws, and lands, and the Scorch starts to take effect, you might already be dead, and that Hellion is going to be utterly useless. So give yourself a chance to at least do something different. Now, that's not to say that Hellion isn't valuable. I've seen people use Hellion in PvP and it works very well for them. However, it's kind of like the Weaver's Call thought, only I think the Weaver's Call is a little bit more universal. Oh, and you get one less fragment slot. Feed the Void is absolutely not necessary in PvP. Yes, you want health. Yes, you want your grenade. I understand all those things. But not only do you have one less fragment slot, but how often are you going to be defeating targets with an ability? You have to have that ability in order to defeat the target with the ability. So your actual benefit from having Devour procced probably is not going to be the same as it's going to be in PvE, where there's more than 6 enemies on the other team. It's just not going to work as well. And finally, we have Bleak Watcher. Now, Bleak Watcher, look, it is what it is. Bleak Watcher could be good in control. And the only way it's going to be good in control is if you're chucking it at a point that you and the other team are going to be going for at the same time. The reason it doesn't really make sense otherwise is because not only are the Bleak Watcher turrets not really that fast at shooting at you, I mean, even I can dodge them, and I'm by no means a PvP expert. But you know, your teammates that you're going to be going up against, you have to assume that when they see something coming at them, they're going to duck. Bleak Watchers might track, but they only track in a straight line. So again, it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you're chucking this thing at the B location in every round of control. And again, it might be more of a scare tactic than anything, but Bleak Watchers don't even damage really the enemy. All they do is start to slow them down. And again, slowing down. If they've got the Jotun equipped and they fire that at you after getting slowed, guess what? The Jotun's not slowed down. The projectile's not slowed down. Neither is any grenade or rocket launcher. So it's not really worth the risk. And again, one less fragment slot. So for fragments, we have quite a number of school schools of thought. I use Fragments for the stat boost. Now, before the PvP sweats get in on my comments and start saying, oh, Durf, you need to still synergize and blah, blah, blah. Yes, you do. But not really. It's not like PvE where you are able to take advantage of every single thing on here. The only sure thing that you're going to be able to take advantage of is the stat boost. And again, our goal here is to get better at PvP, not to master it, because mastering it takes quite a long time. You have to be fast. You have to be agile. You have to get the right armor rolls. You got to be synergistic with your teammates. A lot of the best PvP players have teammates, unless, of course, you're playing in trials solo, which, again, is its own Goliath of a battle to have to accomplish to get to the lighthouse if you're not really that great at PvP to begin with. But generally speaking, when you're in PvP and you're playing in a team environment like Control, like Eruption, etc., you have teammates that generally will run with you just because they're running with you. Nobody really wants to be left alone when they're out on the battlefield. So what can you take advantage of 100% of the time? The stat boost. So I'm going to go through what I have equipped, and we can talk about a couple of things that you may want to work in depending on your playstyle. And I'll also talk about maybe a couple of things that don't really matter at all. So the first fragment I got is Faceted Protection. This is a no-brainer. If you're playing Control, it's going to get crowded at one point or another. Having a little bit of extra damage resistance plus an extra 10 to your melee is 100% welcome. Next up, we have Facet of Honor. I'm taking this strictly for the plus 10 to melee. But again, if one of your teammates gets on a roll, you might be able to get that elemental pickup, get a little bit of bonus Transcendence energy, and of course, whatever those elemental pickups are will grant you some energy back to some ability. However, remember in PvP, the energy regeneration is purposely dialed back, so you can't bank on that to really get you over the edge and get your abilities back much faster. Next up, I have Facet of Sacrifice. While I have an Arc Solar Void buff, my ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. Do I care about this? No, not really. But I want the plus 10 to the grenade stat boost. With Lightning Surge, I will technically have amplified all the time. If I'm using it throughout and not using it necessarily to get my kills, maybe I throw it down and then I move on to the next target. Well, you will get bonus Darkness Transcendence energy if you do get a kill with it as well. Next up, I have Facet of Courage. Your Arc Solar Void abilities deal increased damage to targets affected by darkness debuffs. This one you can't actually take advantage of with your Arcane Needle. Throw your Arcane Needle into an enemy, and then you can throw a Lightning Surge at them right behind. Yeah, you do use 2 of your 3 melee stacks, but hey, you can take advantage of this. But if you aren't able to take advantage of this because maybe you don't play very aggressively in PvP, which again, this is kind of the video for you anyways, you get the plus 10 to grenade on top of it. Next up, I have Facet of Ruin. I absolutely do not take advantage of really anything in Facet of Ruin on a regular basis. However, I will say this. If I am defeating a frozen target because I have the Stasis Grenade equipped, the Stasis Grenade explosion, or I guess the explosion of the frozen enemy, does technically have a bigger increased area of effect. But remember, you're not going to freeze enemies around, you're going to slow them. So again, it's not quite something that you're going to take advantage of in PvP like you will in PvE, because again, if people are pinned down in a gunfight, not a lot of people are just going to run up in front of that person who's currently getting gunned down just to get gunned down themselves. So you won't take advantage of the effects of this as much as you will the plus 10 to weapons. And we're going to go over armor here in a second. Last but not least, I have Facet of Awakening. I'm taking this strictly because of the plus 10 to health. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage, super final blows, generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. The only time you're really going to be able to get that elemental pickup because of Facet of Awakening is when you proc your super and get a kill. So, whether that's Nova Bomb, whether that's Song of Flame, etc., you'll get the corresponding elemental pickup with that. Fire Sprites, Ionic Traces, Void Breaches, Stasis Shards. No Tangles, because again, I don't recommend using Strand as a super. Now, one of the things that someone might say is, well, you can technically proc Lightning Surge at any time that you want. Why don't you have Facet of Hope, since you have Weaver's Call? Because the cooldown of Phoenix Dive is not really that high to begin with. So I'm not really worried about that. I generally almost always have it when I technically want it. I'm not proccing Phoenix Dive just for the sake of proccing Phoenix Dive. I'm using it to get my Weaver's Call activated. And quite honestly, if I'm standing in a healing rift and someone's got the beat on me and they lay, 5-6 rounds into a crit spot on me, I'm not surviving that anyways, even with perfect health, even inside of a healing rift. So I'd rather just take the decrease in cooldown and not have to put Facet of Hope on, which doesn't really benefit me at all anyways, because Weaver's Call is not used to finish enemies as it stands. You could also make the argument for Facet of Bravery. Defeating targets with powered melee final blows grants your weapons unraveling rounds. Again, you're not going to take advantage of this enough for it to even make a difference. Some people might think Facet of Dawn is a good idea. Well, okay, yes, maybe it is a little bit of a good idea if you don't mind the -10 to melee. However, your Radiant is going to last, 5 seconds? So you better have another enemy in the near distance that you are already honed in on as you're mauling down the enemy that you're currently using to proc this. Again, a little bit hard to do in PvP where people don't usually congregate more than 1 or 2 in an area. You're not going to be able to take advantage of this as much as you will in PvE. Some other people might say, well, Durf, what about the Arc Grenade for Facet of Dominance? Okay, you got me on that one. You do get Jolt on the target. However, I already have Lightning Surge, so what do I care? Plus, I have 3 stacks of Lightning Surge technically if I want. So I still have a grenade that doesn't track, won't go around corners like my Threadling Grenade or even the Stasis Grenade will. And, I get a -10 to my grenade stat anyways. Again, you gotta wait. You gotta think about it in terms of, okay, I don't have 20 enemies in front of me anytime that it's busy. It's 6 enemies. Are you really going to take advantage of these debuffs when it takes away from your stats? Probably not. Some might think that Facet of Mending is good. Well, it can be, but are you really relying on your great grenade to get as many kills as would actually proc cure for you? No, probably not. Some people might also say Facet of Solitude is a good option here. This, yes, technically does work. However, you have to have rapid precision hits. The goal of this build is to get better at PvP, not assuming that you're going to be a master after playing 5 rounds of Control in one weekend, or let's just call it 10 rounds of Control in a weekend. And during the week when there's not Iron Banner or you don't have any bonus focus items that you can get from playing PvP in the first place because you've already exhausted them, Facet of Solitude is not really going to make a difference on you being better or worse. Facet of Solitude is more for the people who always hit crits, always are precise with their shots, and can actually, proc something like this. The other thing to consider is that if you are hitting crits, you're probably winning the gun battle anyways if your opponent is not. So what do you need Facet of Solitude for? The 2 stats that matter most in PvP are weapons and health. And I know you're looking at my stats going, well, you might have missed the bar on at least 50% of those stats you just told me about, Durf. What's up? I understand what I'm saying. And I understand what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is health does matter. However, health doesn't matter for the same reason it matters to the average person in PvP who might be more sweaty than someone like you or I in PvP. Health matters in PvP for flinch resistance. However, flinch resistance really only matters if you are someone that has, twitchy enough gameplay to have it really even make a difference for you. Your health does generate a little bit faster. I will give you that when you have max health. However, if you are literally in a one-on-one gun battle with someone who is shooting your face, it's not going to matter if your health is 200 or 0. If you are not doing the same thing to the enemy every shot, chances are you're losing that regardless unless you have a buddy on your side also firing at that same enemy. So it's important to keep things in perspective when you're thinking about stats. So what I have is I have maxed out as much as I can my weapons. Now, it doesn't make sense to go above 200, so I'm getting as close to 200 as possible without going over. The next couple stats that I prefer are the grenade and, of course, the melee. The reason those two are important in PvP is because, number one, I want to have at least a charge of something, whether that's my melee or my grenade at any given time, on top of my class ability if I can help it. The reason that grenade makes more sense for me here in PvP is because of the purpose I'm using my grenade for. I'm using my grenade for its tracking abilities. So, having increased regen from all sources for my grenade makes more sense because the cooldown is longer for one of my grenades than for one of my melee charges. To caveat off of that, melee is important here because you don't want to be waiting for one of your arcane heals to come back. You want them to come back relatively quick. And relatively quick literally is relatively quick. So the easiest way to do that, and again, I understand I'm being a little bit long-winded here, you want to try to get your grenade and your melee to at least a 75. That will give you about 110, 115% ability regen from all sources. If you can get those higher to say like a 90 or even a 100, you will get 190% regen rate from all sources for those abilities. The two stats that absolutely do not matter in PvP, and I understand that some people might have an opinion about this, are my two lowest stats, super and class ability. If I had it my way, super would be at a 20 and my class ability would be at a 44. The reason that super doesn't matter is if you're going in, the regen for your super is already increased by default by the modifiers that are in PvP. If super regenerated in PvP like it does in PvE, it would be nothing but supers, and people would just sit in the corner until they get their super, then they go out there and just, throw it down, and then they go hide again. It doesn't really work like that in PvP. You have to search out the fight. The super will come back to you once, maybe twice during a match. In trials, you may not even get your super back before the game is over. So why would you dump a whole bunch of stats into your super for no reason? It doesn't make sense. So if you can dump some into your class ability, great. But again, it doesn't really matter that much. I'm not relying on my class ability for much. Dump it into the stats you're going to take most advantage of. The number one stat you're going to take most advantage of is your weapons. The number two stat you're probably going to take advantage of is either going to be grenade or health. So in PvP, you see at a 195, I'm already doing 5.7% extra damage to PvP combatants. That will max out once we get to 200. Going over 200 gives us no benefit, so don't do it. Just get as close as you can. A few extra tenths of a percent is not going to make the difference. However, an extra 5% reduces your time to kill, also known as TTK, immensely. Same thing with grenade. And again, why I dumped a lot of stat into grenade. I get an additional 3% PvP damage with my grenade. Is that a game changer? No. If I had this at 150, it might be. But again, we're trying to balance getting our abilities back, not necessarily crutching on any one per se, except our weapons, because that's going to be our primary source of kills, because our goal here is to try to get better at PvP, not necessarily spec into all the meta that PvP can offer. And that is kind of the point of this video. For weapons, my number one weapon that I recommend for PvP, for those who don't PvP and want a fighting chance in every gun battle, is Outbreak Perfected. I've also included some additional weapons, some exotic and some legendary, that I've had success with in PvP, and it's really up to you what you prefer. Next up on the list is going to be the Kvastov. If you've used it in PvP even once, you understand how easy it is to chain damage to an enemy with the ricochet rounds. Next up is going to be Suros Regime. Make sure you're using this on the slower firing method. It is easier to control, and chances are you win those gun battles a little bit easier. Mida multi-tool right now is absolutely wrecking PvP. If you are very confident in your ability to hit all of your crits, Mida multi-tool is going to be your best friend. For legendary weapons, the classic Breakneck is great in PvP. I really have a lot of success with Lethal Abundance. Don't worry about the mods that I have, the perks that I have on this. I just pulled this out for reference. Lethal Abundance, there's a ton of awesome perks available, but it's very stable and very potent. Another one that I really love to use, but I know is not available to everyone, is Firefight. Firefight in one-on-one gun battles goes toe-to-toe with just about everything from a medium distance. And most of your encounters are going to be medium distance. Unless you're running around wielding a sniper rifle, which means you're probably a little bit better in PvP than the average person, you're probably not going to have to worry about engaging with them. But for everything else, Firefight holds up very well. And I will say, 4 times a charm with Adiago is a great combination even in PvP. Last but not least is going to be the Hung Jury. Box breathing and kinetic tremors is very nice to have. If you have a decent roll of Hung Jury, even though it is a 1A, it still does hit like a truck. For the energy slot, my number one weapon that I recommend for PvP is the Amit. You can craft this with the 2 perks that you see here. Matter of fact, I'll just zoom in so you can see dynamic sway reduction and tap the trigger. Those 2 basically make your Amit a laser beam. And oh, by the way, make sure you max out your range. This thing can go toe-to-toe at medium long to pretty long distances. And I'm telling you, I have won some decent gun battles with this weapon way further away from the enemy than I'd like to be when I'm shooting this thing, to my own surprise. You don't have to put on arrowhead break. I also recommend ricochet rounds. Throw on your counterbalance stock, because 32 rounds in a magazine, if you burn through 32 rounds in the magazine and you still haven't killed the enemy, let's face it, man, it's your time to die. And I say that with all due respect to everyone who might be offended by that statement. Other good alternatives are going to be anything 450 round per minute. And there's a couple exceptions. So I'm giving this Prosecutor as one of the other ones that I have had good luck with in PvP. However, some people might think that, you know what, it's time for a special weapon derf. What do you recommend? Any shotgun that you feel comfortable with is a great shotgun. Slide shot is awesome. It helps you reload. 1-2 punch, you can kind of do however you want to do with a shotgun. If you land every pellet, you're going to get a one-shot kill. But again, you have to be aggressive. If you're not planning on being aggressive, a shotgun is only going to get you killed faster. The new style hand cannon is also pretty potent in PvP. However, because of the range, you do have to get pretty close in order to get those kills. So use with caution. If you really want to get some hate mail, and I understand what people are going to say in the comments if they make it this far in the video and I haven't totally bored them yet, the Jotun is a hilarious yet simple weapon to use in PvP. I don't recommend using Jotun if you're going to roll into trials. Believe me, they know how to dodge it. But for the rest of the masses, you have a chance. And that's all I'm going to say. It takes a little bit to get used to if you're not used to holding down the trigger to charge up a tracking shot. But once you get used to that, you can start charging, peek out from behind cover, fire it, and go back behind cover. And you got a 50-50 shot because it does track. In the heavy slot, I recommend using something that is easy to control or a very quick DPS weapon. Commemoration is a great example. 450 rounds per minute. It hits like a truck. Don't worry about the perks because it doesn't really matter. The heavy weapon, when you get your heavy weapon, it's bigger DPS, quicker time to kill, etc., etc. Commemoration is a great one to use in PvP if you do get heavy ammo. You can also throw on your favorite rocket launcher. Now, tongue-in-cheek about rocket launchers, if it's not tracking, it might not be as easy. However, if you're playing control and you shoot this in the center of a capture zone that you know the enemy is in, yeah, you're going to get some kills with that. And that's going to be a rare win for you if you get the heavy ammo and you also get more than one enemy to shoot your rocket launcher at. But commemoration makes more sense. You'll have a little bit better ammo economy. You're not going to have to reload when you pick up your ammo brick of heavy. And it's very easy to control. So for the armor, I'm going to go over possible exotics that you can use depending on your playstyle with whatever you prefer. And then I'm going to tell you what I generally use as far as the exotic in PvP. For the helmet, 2 popular exotics that you could use. The Stag, because you get damage reduction when you're in a rift. It's perfect for control. When you're going after B, you throw your rift down, all your allies stand in it, and you get reduced damage reduction, or you get a damage reduction to allied guardians, granting rift energy when we're critically wounded, and on our death, it creates a healing rift on our corpse for our allies to continue capturing that point. Speaker Sight is also a great option if you do go with the Healing Grenade. Healing Grenades spawn restorative turrets, so you can chuck this literally wherever around you when you're capturing a point, or maybe you're peeking out from behind a wall, and you know that there's an enemy that's going to be firing right at you. You throw this down. It's granting you a little bit of extra healing while you're firing. Maybe you win that gun battle. For the Gauntlets or Ophidian Aspect, Osmiomancy, and Necrotic Grip are 3 that I recommend depending on your playstyle. The most popular of these 3 is going to be Ophidian Aspect. Improves weapon ready speed, reload, and melee range. That speaks for itself. You want all 3 of those things when you're playing in PvP, because again, we're not really relying on our abilities to carry us like we are in PvE. Osmiomancy is nice if you're using the Stasis Grenade, because again, an additional Seeker, you get an additional charge, and it recharges faster on hits. So Seekers also travel farther. And then Necrotic Grip is nice. It is not meta by any means, but you can chuck your Arcane Needle from halfway across the map. It will track to an enemy, and you will cause damage over time. But it's a little bit different than PvE. It's not quite as potent, so you're still going to have to do the legwork to actually finishing off the enemy. This alone will not kill them. For the chest armor, Sanguine Alchemy is a great option. While you're standing in a rift damaging a target will mark it, you deal extra damage to marked targets and gain additional bonus damage with weapons that have a damage type matching your equipped super. Weapon final blows while standing in any rift pause the rift's countdown, extending its duration. So you get a kill, you get some rift energy, and the cycle continues. However, it's not going to be like PvE where you're getting all this stuff back rapid fire. It's a gradual return, and your idea here is to be helping your teammates and vice versa. Them help you if they've got this equipped. Another great option, and I know I might get some flack for this, is Chromatic Fire. The only reason Chromatic Fire works here is if you hit your crits. If you don't hit your crits, the final blow, the explosions from the final blows are not really going to make a difference. But since I'm maining a kinetic weapon, Chromatic Fire might be an option for you too, although I don't typically go to this. For the legs, the only real one that makes a lot of sense is Transversive Steps, because it buffs your sprint, movement speed, and sprinting reloads your current weapon. Again, not one of the top picks that I would use, but if you're looking for a general neutral exotic armor, Transversive Steps will fit the bill. For the exotic class items, I highly recommend something to the effect of Spirit of Ophidian, maybe Spirit of Starfire, if you can get empowered weapon damage from an empowered rift, and then Spirit of Necrotic and Spirit of Synthesips. The only reason this works is because you do get increased melee damage when I'm surrounded. So again, you have to have more than one enemy around you. Typically speaking, Solipsism is not really where I turn, because again, with every spirit in Solipsism that you get, there is usually a drawback. The perk isn't as potent, you're missing one aspect of the perk, etc., etc. So Solipsism is nice on paper. In PvP, it's not as nice. The exotic armor I generally go with is exactly what you see on the screen. None. The reason I have none is because I want my stats. Exotic armors do not get you close to a 100 stat level on any one of them. That's a problem in my eyes, because these exotic armors, and pick any one of them, you get the perfect roll, it's still going to be less than tier 4, tier 5, or sometimes even a tier 3 with a mod and maybe, a masterwork. It's not the same. You also miss out on that masterwork extra 3. So you see, like, for example, my health is at a 49. I'm still not going to get it to a 50, even if I masterwork that exotic armor, because, again, you're picking up the exotic in PvP for a completely different reason than you're picking it up for in PvE. PvE is so you can get your powers back. Period, point blank. However, for something like Ophidian Aspect, improved weapon ready speed, reload, and melee range, you see, even with the mod, I'm at 71. Okay, so just do the math. If I put 15 into that, I'm at 86. Now, is that a huge difference than 100? I guess it depends on who you ask. For me, it's a 14% difference. But for someone who wants the increased ready speed, increased reload, and melee range, that might be worth it to you to have the drop off. But for me, it's not, because what I'd be replacing is 39 weapons, 21 grenade, and 16 melee. Even if this was that same exact roll, I'm still not getting what I want out of the exotic as far as stats, because I'm just waning. Now again, this is 91. That's 71. Okay, I get it. Durf, you're being ridiculous. It's -5 to stats. Stop crying. Okay, well, here we go. Here's a tier 4 that's at a 100. Well, that's a big difference. 40 in my weapons, 25 and 20. That is a huge difference from going, let's just say to 91. I mean, that's a big difference. That is the difference between getting to that next 10 level and getting a little bit of extra stats back on those 2 stats, and then going down 14 stats. Well, let's also do the math here, like logically. Those 14 stats are not coming out of your 3 lowest stats. So where are they coming out of? The 3 highest stats that you want the armor for in the first place. That's a problem for me, because the 2 stats that are going to be affected are mainly your secondary and your tertiary stat. So instead of having, I'll just use this as instead of having 20 and 25 and 40, I've got 39, 21, and 16. I mean, again, that's only a 9 stat difference. If I'm going down to an 86 stat, well, now it's got to come out of somewhere else. So maybe that's a 38 or a 37. Maybe that's a 19 and a 14. I don't know. But is it worth the stat drop off just to get a little extra increased reload speed when I'm not that sweaty to begin with? So again, not really. But again, that's me. If you want the extra potency for, say, your Osmiomancy gloves, or you want maybe the Stag, which would make a lot of sense, or even Sanguine's Alchemy, I understand why those might be attractive to the average player. However, the goal is to be as well-rounded as possible in PvP, because we aren't well-rounded. Those of us who aren't sweaty in PvP aren't what we would call well-rounded players. We're just getting in to get some loot and get out and try to survive, not completely just, blow it all over the battlefield. We want to be able to hold our own. Well, are any of these exotic armors really going to make you hold your own if you can't hit, the broadside of a barn with your weapon? No. Are any of these exotics going to make us any better if our armor doesn't have a high weapon stat? No, probably not. What about a high grenade stat or a melee stat or a health stat? No, probably not. If I can't shoot at the enemy, which is the whole point of PvP, all of these things that I'm talking about don't really matter. The difference between that line of thinking and where I'm at mentally when I'm trying to think about what I want to do with my armor for PvP is that PvP to me is kind of, I don't know, it's like a lesser hobby. Like, I like PvP. I don't like sweating. I like PvP more like in a team environment or with my clan or, with a couple of buddies. PvP to me is more fun when you have friends. When you're solo and you're just kind of out there, nobody really, it's not like you're all talking to each other and everyone's coming up with this grand battle strategy to win the game. Everyone kind of understands what the assignment is, and we're all just kind of trying to struggle together, figure it out. Well, you and your 10 kills, you and your 6 kills, you and your 15 kills. 15 kills, you might start to sway the game a little bit. 10 kills, 6 kills, 5 kills, 8 kills, you're not swaying the game. So get those kills more efficiently by having your armor balanced over picking an exotic just because you don't have one. Save use your exotic in your weapons. Don't worry about the exotic so much in your armor. And yeah, I know some people are going to go in the comments and be like, Durf, man, you're insane. Why wouldn't you use an exotic? It's there. You can take the buff from it. Because it's not going to make a difference that much on how I perform in PvP anyways. And we're going to go over the armor mods right now and why I still stand behind that. For the stat distribution, make sure you also put on whatever general armor mod that you need. Now, in the helmet, you're going to want to put on targeting mods for whatever weapon you're going to main. For me, since it's a kinetic weapon, I'm I'm putting kinetic targeting on. What this does is improves target acquisition, accuracy, and aim down sight speed for kinetic weapons. Because you're going to run out of energy, unless you have an extra couple energies to spare. Put on Radiant Light. Casting your super causes nearby allies to also increase their current armor charge by 1. Allies that have a different super element than you increased armor charge by 2. You'll get to do this one time. Your allies will thank you, and then you'll be done. And hopefully they're doing the same for you. For the gauntlets, put on whatever loader mod that you are using in relation to whatever the main damage type is that you're using. Since it's kinetic, I'm putting on kinetic loader. If you're using solar weapons, go ahead and put on solar. You're not worried about generating orbs of power with your abilities. So go ahead and get that out of your head right now. In PvP, it is survival right away, every single time. You're not getting rapid kills, usually. You're not going from enemy to enemy to enemy to enemy to enemy. It's enemy, recover your health. Find the next enemy, recover your health. Maybe play the objective if you're playing control, etc., etc., etc. If you're playing trials, it's even more scarce, orbs of power. So don't rely on them. One thing that I do say is worth it is fastball. You could chuck your grenade a lot faster, or a lot further, and for your threadling grenade or your osmomancy grenade, oh my goodness, your stasis grenade, it's worth the extra throw distance. Even if you might not make it before they unfreeze, you'll still get that time to maybe get the jump on them. For the chest armor, make sure you're putting an unflinching aim on there. Reduces flinching from incoming firewall. I'm aiming a kinetic weapon. If you're using a solar weapon, use the solar unflinching aim. If you're using a void or an arc or whatever, make sure all of these match the element that you are maining the most. Don't worry about your secondary weapon. Your secondary weapon is there if you need it, if you need to switch for it, but it's not what you're maining most of your kills on. For the legs, this is a no-brainer. Put on enhanced athletics. Increases your base movement and jump height. Everyone put these on. There is literally nothing in your leg armor that is worth more than those. None of this top row, none of this second row, third row, fourth row, definitely not the holsters. And what do you care about the scavenger row for? Exactly. Get your base movement speed and your jump height higher by putting those 3 on. For the class item, make sure you put on distribution since you are going to be using your class ability. Make sure you put on Reaper because you are going to be using your class ability. And for me personally, it makes sense to put on a bomber so I get my threadling grenade back a little bit faster. As far as the artifact goes, the artifact doesn't matter. There's literally nothing in the artifact that is going to make anybody's life any easier in PvP. It just doesn't. Your main focus on PvP is your weapons and your armor. There's no artifact bonuses in PvP. So if you're thinking, well, what do I put on for my mods? Do I put on anti-barrier overload? Why? You got champs in PvP that I don't know about? Nope. So go ahead and max out your damage resistance because that's what the new gear bonus is. You get the kinetic slot or energy slot weapon damage bonus based on a featured weapon. Again, everything is tailored different in PvP. What you rely on in PvE is not going to be as potent in PvP. Your base stats and your weapons of choice and your ability to shoot the enemy in the face matters most. So that is kind of my synopsis of how to build your character, or specifically your warlock, better so that you can be a more effective PvP player. Now, is this going to put you in the top, in the top 3 every single round, every single match in PvP? No. But what you'll find is when you build your character like this, you might get some better armors that give you a little bit more health stat. Okay, maybe you're not using your grenade because you forget about it. Okay, maybe you're not using your melee. Maybe you realize, hey, you know what? I'm only getting 1 super that I'm able to really use. And sometimes I don't even kill a single enemy with the super because they dodge out of the way. Well, guess what? As you play PvP and you get those armors, make sure you're saving your loadout, put it down here in slot number 12, the forgotten slot in my opinion, and save your updates to your PvP builds. So guess what? The next time that Iron Banner comes around, the next time you want to jump into trials, the next time that your clan wants to get 6 together to go play some control, you have a build that is ready. Maybe you have to change up the weapons, or maybe you want to change this or that up inside, or maybe you have a better piece of armor that fits it better. Your two main stats, being weapons and health in this, are going to carry you further than any of your abilities ever will in PvP. And I know that sounds kind of not right, but I promise you it is, because if you can't kill an enemy with a weapon, it's not going to matter if you can chuck your threading grenade from here to, you know, the other side of the world. It won't give you a single kill more if you can't shoot the enemies first. You shoot first, use your abilities second. Health is up there in that first slot. But if you don't have the best rolls for health, don't think that you can't jump into a PvP round of control or eruption or whatever. Heck, I've even used this in competitive and done pretty well. Am I top 1 or 2 every single time? No. But my KD, like what I showed you guys in the intro video, is still respectable. You want to be able to get over that 1.00 KD to at least say, I'm killing as many enemies as many times as I'm dying. That is the goal of this particular video. And again, I know it was long-winded, and some people might be in the comments like, bro, I cannot listen to you yammer for, 20, 30 minutes. Trust me, I get it. But for those people out there that don't know or aren't as apt to PvP and knowing what's good and knowing that, and they all together shy away because, hey, I don't want to just go out there and have a bad time. Believe me, I get that. I've been that guy. Sometimes I am that guy. It's not like I'm going out there and wowing the masses every single time I step on the battlefield in PvP. It takes a minute to warm back up to the speed. It takes a little bit to warm back up to relying on your weapons. It takes a little bit to warm back up to a lot of different things going on in PvP that you don't really have to worry about in PvE because there's so much more chaos. So anyways, if you guys did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who could benefit, I'm gonna change it up real quick. If you know a Warlock out there who is looking for a way to boost their Warlock potency in PvP, knowing that they're not really a PvP main, they don't really cater to PvP, but they want to have a respectable style of play in PvP, make sure you send this video with them, or make sure you send this video to them or send them my way. My goal, again, is to help as many people as possible. To caveat off of that, this style of build, this build that I have, the stats that I have where I have them, you can technically apply this to the other two classes, but I will say this. If you want me to make a Titan and a Hunter equivalent to this, and you want me to go through the different things that you can do with both of those characters, I am 1000% happy to do that. And I know you haven't seen a lot of Titan or Hunter videos from me this season, but PvP is its own science. So if you guys would like that, make sure you let me know in the comments. So I'm going to switch back over to some more game highlights, and I'm just going to wrap it up real quick. I know that this was long, but you guys probably want to see a little bit more killing and a little less of me talking. Alrighty, so again, if you guys want me to make a Hunter or a Titan version of this video where I go through everything that you could possibly wonder about in terms of PvP and how to outfit either of those two characters, make sure you guys let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to do it. As far as this video goes, I really want to thank everyone who watched this video. I know it was long-winded. I generally make videos that are half this length, and I understand that it took some patience to get through a lot of the different topics that I talked about. And I know that I did go off on a couple of tangents and try to give as best of an explanation of the theories as possible. So thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for tuning into me, and hopefully this can help somebody out there who really just shies away from PvP because they just, they think that they can't make a difference in the game or be a great teammate. If I can do it, anybody can do it, I promise you. I am not sweaty, and I don't claim to be amazing at PvP. I'm just trying to help other people out there who might need it. So thanks as always. I'll see you next time. Take care.